So that will work out much better for you, I hope. Also, so welcome to Author and Their Journey series featuring Nalo J. Stewart. Nalo has written 2 books. We have both of the books in the Pasadena Public Library. This is the cover of both of them. And if you could see behind Nalo, she actually has the cover of her 2 books. And she's been exceptionally generous to the Pasadena Public Library and has donated her books to the library that are cataloged and available for you to check out and enjoy as well. And as I said to everyone, Pasadena Public Library is celebrating Black History Month. You can find all of our programs in the Black History brochure, and also in our bi-monthly off-the-shelf, we list all of our authors and their journey series. So I'd like to feature Nalo. Nalo, can you click on yourself so that you show?
Yeah.
Because they're perfect. So if you can see right there, that will be just fine. So maybe a lot of you already know Nalo, but in case you don't, this is Nalo J. Stewart. And she was born and raised in Southern California. Her desire to create colorful characters and multifaceted environments was born from a youth spent traveling the world with her parents and siblings. She lived in Washington, D.C. for 5 years, during which time she earned a bachelor's degree with a major in journalism and a minor in psychology from Howard University. She returned to California and began a career in education shortly thereafter. She put her love of storytelling on the back burner while raising her family. So it's taken her. I'm very sorry, but I'm going to stop for just a few minutes because we have some people. Everybody needs to mute themselves, please.
Okay. Christine, are you able to mute everybody else?
I'm muting people right now. Okay. And so.
I'm sorry, Chief, you were saying.
But everybody needs to stop their video as well. So if you go down to your screen on the left corner and stop your video, because we really would love to be able to feature Nalo. Okay. Okay, I think we're ready to go. So everybody has heard a little bit about Nalo. Raised in Southern California, she's a desire to create colorful characters and multifaceted environments. She's lived in Washington, D.C. for 5 years. She has a bachelor's in journalism with a minor in psychology from Howard University. And she returned to California, started to raise her family, and worked in education. So fast forward to July 2021, she published her first book, Strangers When We Die. So think about that. That was July 2021, where she indulged in both her love for old-fashioned detective stories and her desire for inclusivity. Her second novel, Robyn Destiny, was released in November 2021. And dabbles in suspense, romance, and unforgettable social commentary. Along with her love of storytelling, Nalo is an avid reader of all types of fiction, nonfiction if the author's brilliance beckons her. Has 3 magnificent people who call her mom. She prefers walking over going to the gym and is a fervent moviegoer. So with that introduction, I am delighted to welcome this afternoon to Pasadena Public Library's Authors and Their Journeys series, and I know you're going to enjoy meeting Nalo. Welcome, Nalo.
Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Just speak up. Okay.
So first of all, I want to thank Christine, as well as all the members of the Pasadena Public Library for allowing me to be a part of the Authors and Their Journey series. It means a lot to me. And I think Christine said in the bio that years ago, I actually worked at the Pasadena Public Library as a page. And so this kind of feels like, I don't know, a full circle moment for me. So I've been excited ever since this was announced. So thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of it. So I just thought that I wouldn't do any reading of the books, and I would just kind of talk about my journey of what led me from school to now. And so I'll go back to Howard. I went to Howard University. I got my degree in journalism. And at the time, I thought that writing for newspapers or television or the newscaster was the thing for me. And I don't know where it veered off, but I got my degree and I ended up in public education. And I've been there all these years. Not so much in front or from the teaching standpoint, but from administrative side. And it's been very educational, which, pardon the pun. And I guess during that time, I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot about what it was that I wanted, which I didn't really know what that was because I was busy being a wife and a mother and raising my children. And now my children are taking care of themselves. They're off doing their own things in college and whatnot. And then I had to decide exactly what it was I wanted for myself. And I started writing short stories. So I started with, and I don't know if any of you are familiar, but it's a site, or it's actually it's a universe really, as called fan fiction. And so I wrote stories in fan fiction, and they were pretty popular. The fandom was pretty popular. I sort of honed the skill of writing, which was I was pretty good at, but they were short stories, and I never intended to do anything beyond short stories, because when you get to a certain point in your life, you figure that those big dreams are not something that's going to happen for you. You figure that your time, or the time that you thought you had, you pretty much, your path is already chosen, and going to start something new seems ridiculous. So I just wrote short stories. But some of them, again, were so popular. And one of them in particular was popular enough that I had friends that told me, a few in particular, who said, this would be a good book. And I thought, well, you know what, why not? And so that became a journey in and of itself. And if you've ever even considered writing a book, and those of you who are a part of this program may have, I would say it's not as easy as you think, but you probably already know it's not easy. But turning a story into a book is daunting. And I'd never done it before. And here I was right out of the gate trying to write a book that was initially a story. So after the idea came and after the story was written, I went through the process of turning it into a book. That took me about 6 months. And I learned along the way, lots of YouTube videos, lots of reading about how to actually format it. I had the idea, and the idea really is the easy part. Putting it into a format that, as a reader, because I enjoy reading, but I also enjoy when things are put together well. And I knew that if I'm going to do this, then I needed to do it right. So that was kind of how that happened. And so when it was all done, and I got it edited and went through that whole process, I said, okay, now let's find an agent. And so this is a thing that you have to learn. And I knew this because I'd known other people who'd written books and the issue with agents. The thing that I didn't know is that the world has changed. And so the way that things used to be done is not that way now. It's you still vie for that traditional publishing because that's what we are all trained to do. But the world of self-publishing is huge. And so even though that's not where I went to at first, I did the querying. I sent out more letters than I could possibly begin to tell you. And this was around the beginning of 2020. Well, then the world flipped upside down, as we all know. And so I put my story to the side because I just thought it wasn't something that was going to happen for me. And again, I was still on the whole track of being a traditionally published author. And I just felt it wasn't going to happen for me at this point in my life, and that maybe it was best for me to just let my life finish out the way that it had been going, which hasn't been bad, but that was what I wanted to do. And that's what I thought I would do. And I had some really, really good people, really good people. And if you're going to do something like this, you need to have people that believe in you really almost as much as you believe in yourself. And I was blessed enough to have that. And I had friends, and I had an incredible uncle and mother and siblings and children and friends. And I had people who said, you can do this. And so pulled that book out of the dust of my flash drive. And I went through the process of, I watched some YouTube videos on actually the process of doing independent publishing. And I'm going to throw out a few names just because I'm going to name drop, but there are people who are so good at helping you on YouTube. And there are independent authors, many of them who are incredibly successful, one of them being Christina C. Jones, and the other being Alexandria House, and there's so many, Joan Vassar. But they're in a genre that I had never even considered, which is romance geared towards the Black community, which again, had never been a romance reader. I always consider myself more of a Stephen King reader. And then if I went to Black authors, it was more of a Toni Morrison type of read. But these were authors who gave such good advice on the channels that I thought, maybe I could try that. Granted, my books are not in that genre, but still the information they gave was so beneficial. And so I said, okay, let me figure out how to get a cover. Let me figure out which venue I will use to do my book. And I had another good friend who agreed to do my cover. And here we were. So I managed to get that book out, which is Strangers When We Die. And so I went with Kindle Unlimited, Kindle Direct Publishing, and through Amazon, and I think most of us are familiar with that. I did research to decide which was best for me. This was the best outlet for me, was Kindle Direct Publishing. So when I finished that, and I got my cover and I got everything done, I put it out there. Okay, so the other thing is marketing, because I didn't know about that. And I've never been really big on social media. So luckily I did have friends and family, and they had friends and family, and people found the book. And since I never intended to write another book, I was like, well, you know what? It's all good. I got my book out. I completed something. I started something and I finished it. And that was more important to me than anything else. It wasn't until once it was done and I sat back, I had this idea that just, I call it niggling in my brain, that I just could not get out of my head. It was after a conversation with a good friend of mine. And that's where Robyn Destiny came from. Again, I never intended to write another book, but once I had the idea, I knew that I had to get it on paper. It took me just under 2 months to finish the book. I went back to my same editor. And again, this is somebody that I found on Tumblr who just really worked well with me. We never met. She actually doesn't live in this country, but we jived so well together. And I sent her the book and I went through the process again. I knew a little bit more this time. Still not big on social media, but I knew a bit more. Went to my friend, he did the cover, and I ended up with Robyn Destiny. And I think it was after Robyn Destiny that I knew that being an author is something that I want. And not just writing a couple of books, but that this is something that I want to do. And at this point in my life, it seems gargantuan. It seems almost like something that's ridiculous to even try to do. But again, I've had so many people who've had faith in me that it's hard not to have faith in yourself when you have people behind you saying you can do this. And I've had that. I've had that in my home, outside of my home, even people that I don't know on social media, sending me congratulations and saying, hey, I can't wait to the next book. I mean, like, wow. So that's kind of how Robyn and Destiny and Strangers When We Die came about. And so I think I said it in my last book signing that I decided that I was an actual author when Robyn and Destiny came out. But I kind of feel like now I really am, because I am just finishing up my third book. And I'm hoping to have that out in the next couple of months. And it is a full-on romance novel. So, which is completely something I didn't think I would ever do. But it's not, it's a newer kind of romance novel. It's more in line with who I am. So I would say it's not my grandmother's type of romance novel, you know, and no shade on my grandmother, because she was the most amazing woman ever. But it's not that type of romance, but it would be in that genre, and that is how I will be promoting it. Strangers When We Die, I promoted under mystery. Robyn and Destiny, I promoted under women's fiction, and this one will be promoted. So, and the one after that, which I've already outlined, is sort of sci-fi romance. So I decided I'm just kind of gonna write whatever it is that I feel works for me, and hopefully people will like it. So that's it.
Thank you so much, Nalo, to explaining all of that to us. You have learned an immense amount. Congratulations to be able to do all of that yourself and to self-teach yourself how to do that. That is absolutely amazing. And to be able to write these 2 books, and now on your 3rd book, and you're on 3 different genres, it's just absolutely amazing. So before I ask you to tell us a little bit about your first 2 books, and maybe a special little hint about your 3rd book and what the name of it is. So do you sit at a desk and write every day? I mean, are you determined? Are you still working administrative in education? Do you type on a typewriter? Do you keep a journal? What do you do?
Oh, wow. Okay, there's a lot. So I don't write every day. I write most days. And if I'm not physically writing, I'm always creating in my head. And a lot of times I will pull a Post-it, a paper. There can be any paper that's next to me, and I write words down. I'm constantly doing that. I started doing that when I started writing stories for the fandom. I do work 9 to 5 or 8 to 4:30 every day, Monday through Friday. So most of Robyn and Destiny was during the pandemic. So that gave me a little more time telecommuting. And then, so I had more time to think about those things. Writing this novel is different because I have to sit and I focus on my job for 8 hours and then leave there. And I sometimes, well, there is a couple of Starbucks that are still open that I can go inside, but I prefer to write somewhere that's not at home. Even though I do have a desk, I generally don't write at my desk. I generally have, I sit at my recliner with a TV tray and I write there. And I do, and when you ask how I write, I recite, so I dictate. So I will dictate to myself. I handwrite little notes and I type. And then the typing part usually is once I have, I'm usually transcribing it for myself. So so I write any way it comes to me is how I get it out. And you did ask about the books. So I'll take a moment and I will talk about the books. So Strangers When We Die. Okay, so I am like so old school when it comes to old time television. I raised in the late 70s or in the 80s. And I always loved detectives. My favorite detectives, Columbo, and Barnaby Jones. Those were my two favorites. My detective in Strangers When We Die came from my thoughts of them. I sort of combined the two, even though my detective, his name is Isaiah Holiday. He pretty much looks a lot like Barnaby Jones, and that was not done in error. If you look and you can kind of see what he looks like, that's Isaiah. It is the idea behind Strangers When We Die is there's a woman who is on social media. She happens upon someone's selfie, and in the background is a man who looks like her husband who died some years back. She's convinced that this is her husband. So she looks up Isaiah Holiday. She goes to his detective agency, and she's already been given the runaround by so many others, and she's convinced that this is her husband. So the book takes you through what Isaiah does, his investigation, and it goes to some unexpected places and ends up in some unexpected places. But I told the story that I wanted to tell. It, for me, had an old-fashioned feel from like an old Barnaby Jones episode or Murder, She Wrote episode kind of thing. And so that's where that came from. My characters, it's very diverse characters. Isaiah is, he's in his 70s, Southern, Caucasian. He's been in the South his whole life. And those around him, again, it's a very multi character. It's very character driven. It starts one way, and like I said, it's going to take you some places you don't expect. But that was the story that I wrote for the fandom that people liked so much. And I'd written about 7 or 8 stories, but it was the one that I got so many reviews for and so many requests for that I thought, well, if I'm going to make a book, it would be that one. So that's Strangers When We Die. I don't know if you want to talk about, has any questions about that, or want me to move on to Robyn and Destiny? I can't hear you. You're muted. Christine?
Are there any questions about Stranger When We Die? Because you can put them in the chat. You know, people are putting their questions in the chat. They kind of want to know, are the characters, they get in your head and they live with you, and you're someone, you've watched a lot of movies and a lot of TV shows, and you probably wrote the thesis of this in one of your short stories. Is that kind of what you did, and then you enlarged it for the book, yes. Strangers When We Die?
Yes, it was a story, and I think there were maybe 11 chapters. It was an 11-chapter story, and it wasn't short. It wasn't super long, but turning it into a book, I had to broaden. So it was sort of, it's a story. So it's like this, making it into a book, I had to make it like that. And that, the reason I haven't decided to make any of my other books, stories and books, is because that was difficult. It's much easier for me to just write from my head and just put it on the paper. Trying to sort of transcribe what I've written into something bigger, it was very daunting. And even though I learned so much, and I guess the process was good because I learned, but yeah, I went through a lot to change that story into a book, but it was giving more depth to each character. And that was probably what was the most difficult, in broadening the world that they were in, making it bigger, where it wasn't just them, but it was this bigger world. Okay, somebody asked, you want me to answer a couple of these?
Well, somebody wants to write, yes, of course, we want you to answer them. So, okay. Well, if we want to hear, first of all, about Robyn and Destiny. Someone wants to know how you're going to market these 2 books, how you're going to market the third one. When writing your books, does the idea come for the story come before the characters? I think you've somewhat kind of answered that. Somebody wants you to read an excerpt, perhaps. So everybody's just enjoying the program, is what it is. So let's.
Okay, so the marketing thing,
Yeah.
let me talk about that. I, again, very grateful, very blessed. I have an amazing family, one of them being my sister, my mom and my daughter, all of whom are big in, so, well, my mom is not, but my sister is, and she has helped me to get better with Instagram, get better with getting the word out and the marketing. So in terms of marketing, I will do more marketing, a lot more marketing for my third book, which I'm going to actually do a title reveal in the next couple of weeks. And then I'm going to do a cover reveal at some point in March. And then the book will be out in April, all things being okay. And so in terms of marketing, that's what I'm doing. I'm hoping in the next year or two, as my other books drop, I'll get better. And I think I'm getting better, but I have a lot to learn. And I'm open to, I constantly go to other people that have been successful with independent, who are indie authors as myself, and to get as much information as I can. I'm that person who, when you say you want to give advice and you say, oh, they probably don't want to hear it. I'm the one that wants to hear it. I love any kind of information. Somebody will come to me and say, Nalo, I think you should do such and such. And I will jump right on that, because I know that, first of all, I know I don't know. And I'm happy to take any advice. A good friend of mine who is in Maryland runs a business. She's wonderful, Regina Buffet. And she has given me pointers on how she markets her business, which is pretty huge there in Maryland. So in terms of marketing, I think my best answer is I'm still trying to figure it out.
I think you've done a very, very good job. And I think actually after a couple more books, you can almost teach a class and help somebody else.
I don't know about that, but I do.
In addition to being an author, you're kind of launching yourself into.
Well, I don't know. I do feel like the only thing, I don't know if it's the only thing, but I truly believe that the one thing that maybe I could pass on to anybody is, I don't want to make myself sound old, but sometimes we get to a certain point in our lives. You hit a certain age. You know, I thought 30 was so old when I was 30. And then I thought 40 was so old when I was 40. And now being on the other side of 50 and starting something new, it feels weird, first of all, and it's scary. And it almost, in the beginning, and I would lament to everybody who would listen, it's just like, what's the point? I mean, there are so many young authors out there that have so many more years ahead of them in terms of writing, where I don't. And I think it was probably my mom that said, well, if you don't start with what did she say? If you don't move forward with what you're doing, then you absolutely will not get it done. In other words, I'm totally messing up what she said, but it was really great advice that basically said, you can stop right now and never get it done, or you can do it. And you can look back and say, this is something I completed. It doesn't matter what age you are. And I think that if I was going to ever teach a class or talk to people, it would be that years ago, I thought that maybe I could write a book. And then I convinced myself that I couldn't. And then I got older, and then I knew that I was past the point that I could do it. And then my children got older and they moved on and they in school. And then I'm just like, well, I obviously am past that point. And now it turns out that I'm not. And it turns out that had I not just gone on and done it, then I would look back maybe years from now and regret that it was something that I didn't even try, which was why I put Strangers When We Die out, because it was a journey I wanted to complete. And I think I already said it, but I never thought that I would continue on a journey of writing. And so Robyn and Destiny, it's, well, it's one of those books that maybe is a little controversial, which I get. I think that I told this story I wanted to tell. Is when I've had people question me about the end, I told the story I wanted to tell. I've had people that have read it and thought it would go one way, and then people who read it and thought it would go a whole other way. No one thought it would go the way that it went, but it was a story that niggled in my brain, and it was a story I wanted to tell, and I told that story. I am working on a follow-up because it wasn't until it was done that I thought, well, maybe the story isn't completely over yet. So my intent, along with the other two books that I've mentioned, is to do the follow-up to Robyn and Destiny, and to hopefully have it out by the end of the year, with the early next year. And it will go back into, it'll be a darker genre. I don't know what the genre is going to be, but it will probably fall somewhere in suspense thriller. And that will be the follow-up to Robyn and Destiny. But I'm just going to give you a quick synopsis of Robyn and Destiny, which is they're two mothers, which the women on the cover, they're two moms who, after something happens, they decide to take matters into their own hands and do something that neither thought they would ever do. And it's a journey for them. There is romance in there, and there's a lot in there. Robyn and Destiny has been a difficult book for me to market because I've determined it's women's fiction, but it's got a lot going on, and it's because it's a main plot, but then there are subplots, well, two main subplots, which all converge at the end. So it's I think it's definitely worth taking a look at. I mean, not just because I wrote it, because I think that it's an interesting story. And like I said, I think the follow-up will be surprising for people. And again, I've already worked the follow-up to Robyn and Destiny out in my head.
Great. So now you're in the midst of your third book, which is just absolutely amazing. You work full time, and then you write. So these books must be constantly in your mind as you're driving from.
They are. If I'm telling you,
Christine, you're dreaming too.
If you were to come to my desk, I tend to I write. I always have thoughts in my head, so I'm constantly writing. And so I have Post-its that'll just be stuck all over, which usually make no logical sense to anybody, but I will write it. And when I was in DC over the break, I was writing little notes, and my friend looked at me, he's like, what? Because it was like a sentence that made no logical sense to anybody, but it was a sentence that I knew would be a part of one of my books. I don't even know which one, but I have all of these thoughts in my head, which ironically, I can't say it used to happen to me. It seems to have happened to me at this age. When I was younger, I think I was too busy raising my kids I was focused on what their dreams were. I really had kind of given up on whatever dreams I thought I had, which I don't, if I'm truthful, I don't even remember really what my dreams were when I was younger. I knew I wanted to get my degree in journalism, but and then right after I graduated, I had my son, and I think he became my focus, and his dreams became whatever his dreams were, mine were. And same with my other kids, whatever they were in, a play, a game, whatever, that became my dream. And so it's when you have to sit back and try and even think about what it is you want, that's probably where the hard work comes in. And I guess a couple of years ago, when I started writing those short stories, that was when I decided that I probably had to get my own dream, because they had theirs and I need to get my own. So there's that.
Fabulous. So you're going to write a series. How many books are going to be? So Robyn and Destiny is going to be a series.
Well, it's going to have a follow-up book. I got a review from someone, and they're like, of course, she wasn't pleased. She wasn't super happy with the ending. And she says, but I really hope that there's a series. I hope you do a series because I really want to see what happens with this story. Because again, I thought the story ended, but everybody else seemed to think it didn't. I can guarantee there is a follow-up to Robyn and Destiny. In terms of it being a series beyond that, I won't say. I will say that there will be, and when I market it, back to the marketing, at the end of the year, hopefully I'll get it finished, or early next year, I will market them together. And then we'll see what happens. I don't know. We'll see what happens with this romance genre that I'm going to try and get into.
Well,
And I will, that one, I won't really give much information about the new book. As I said, I'm going to do a title reveal. I will say that it's a different type of romance. And I read a lot of books, and a lot of them over the last year and a half have been romance novels. And most of them are geared towards, or the characters are in their 20s or 30s, which is great. I mean, I love those stories. But there are some of us that aren't in those age groups. And some of us still have an interesting story to tell. And this is a story of a woman who is a woman of a certain age. And her story, I think, is very compelling, and it's happy and it's sad. And I think that it's a story that will be interesting to people of every age, not just people my age or people in their 20s. I think that her story is something everybody can understand, I think.
so you started to write later in life, as you said, after you raised your family and have your career. So when you grew up, did your parents read you? You traveled a lot, but did you read lots and lots of stories? Do you remember a teacher from school that made you love stories or writing? Or
Well, both of my parents are educators. Both of them are educators. My dad actually is a published author as well. My mom is a writer. She's never published anything, but she writes all the time. Brilliant mind, my mother. And my brother also is a published author, independently published back in the 90s, and brilliant book. And we did travel a lot. I've had some of the people that are on here are some of my teachers who I don't know, I'm not going to start naming everybody. I'm just going to say that I was surrounded by brilliant people, brilliant teachers. My walimus, Swahili for teacher, my walimus taught me not just writing and not just reading and arithmetic and all of that, but the importance of self, the importance of loving myself and loving my community and making my community better than it was when I stepped into it. That came from my teachers and my walimus. And I am a happy benefactor of everything that they gave me. And so, yes, I've been surrounded my whole life with books and knowledge, which I've passed on to my children. And I think I've already said that I never actually thought I would write. And one of my teachers, and this is just a funny story, but who, I'm just going to throw that out there. But when he read Strangers When We Die, they came into town. They don't live here now. And he just looked at me and he said, Nalo, because the book is nothing of what he expected I would write. But I said, no, I have a lot of things in my head, and not all of it is going to be what you would think I would write, because people know me and they just assume that I'm going to write a specific thing. And it is so not that. And then there's Robyn and Destiny, which is way different than Strangers When We Die. And I'm like, well, but the look on his face was priceless for me. Years from now, I'll laugh at his reaction when he finished the book and said, and just shook his head. He shook his head and he's like, where did you come up with that? I know I didn't teach that. I was like, yeah, you did. you taught me to use my imagination. You taught me education. You taught me looking outside of myself. You taught me all of that. So, but yes, I am appreciative of all of the people that have.
So, and you told me that you also surrounded yourself with lots and lots of books, you just said, but I want to remind everybody, in case they don't know, that you were a page at
Yes.
the Pasadena Central Library. And in case they don't know what a page is, that's somebody that helps organize all of our books, shelves our books, so gets to know the collection very, very well.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
we're very happy to be able to have an author that we can say was a page at Central Library.
And when we were shelving those books, and if you know anything about pages, I don't know if it's still that way. I mean, that was 100 years ago. I hope that it's better now, but it's never ending, because the books come down the chute, and you put them onto the cart, and you put them in order based on the floor that they're going to go onto and the section they're going to go onto, and then you go and you put them back. And I loved the biography area. That was the area that biography and mystery, those were the two sections. And I can't tell you how many books Little Richard, I still remember sitting there flipping through Little Richard's book, and his book and other books. But yeah, I've always loved to be surrounded by books. And I happen to have been raised by people who love books. And so I guess it only made sense that I would end up at the library. And now that my book will be at the library, which I just want to say, there'll never be enough words for me to say how grateful I am to be in the Pasadena Public Library. It just means so much to me. You will never know. It means so much to me. So when the pandemic and everything's over, I can't wait to go and see my book in the library.
Well, everybody can go to the Pasadena Public Library website, go to our catalog, search by your last name, Stewart, and then Nalo J, or search by Robyn Destiny and Strangers When We Die, and then soon your third book, and check it out. So, and unfortunately, you worked at the Pasadena Central Library, if I understand correctly.
I work at the main branch library.
The main branch, Central Library on Walnut, and I don't know whether everybody is aware of that, but in May of this year, the building was red tagged. It is a Myron Hunt building that was built in 1927. So right now, it's going out to bid for renovation, and it's going to take at least 5 years, and the cost of lots and lots of money, because it's a building that's on a National Register of Historic Places. So that means when they start to do any work, every piece of paneling must come off and be tagged and then stored correctly, so that it can go back exactly where it was. So it's quite a long process. So your books are at one of our branches, if you look that up. So we're not adding books to the Central Library, because nobody can go in and browse them. So,
which, is kind of a bummer.
You'll see that you can go and browse them at our different branches.
Libraries.
So anyway, so now your books are in print. Are you going to put them in audio?
Yeah, that's the question, isn't it? So back to the supportive family that I have. So one of my cousins has a studio, and one of my best friends has somebody who is also a very good friend of mine, who is doing the Audible, and my Auntie Lane, who I think is probably in here, will also be doing the Audible. So yes, we are working on it. We actually got pretty good into it, and then when Omicron hit, we had to sort of put a stop to it for a while. But we are working on Strangers When We Die, Audible, yay! And then I want to go right into Robyn Destiny. I definitely will be putting the new, soon to be given name on Audible, because romance And again, for anybody who is familiar with romance genre, audibles are seem to be really important in that genre. But yeah, we will definitely be getting, hopefully all 3 books or every book that I do, because audiobooks are pretty big. So yes, they will be, but I'm hoping that people will still get the books and read them now, because I can't say exactly when that's going to happen. If things hadn't gotten sort of crazy with the pandemic, I think we would have been finished with Strangers When We Die probably about the beginning of the new year. So now it's been pushed. So yes, I am working on the audiobooks for those, and we'll be going straight into Robyn Destiny.
Boy, you are very, very busy. Very
It's a
busy.
lot.
And so do you go on book tours? Do you have you approached like Romans or go on book tours of other bookstores around San Gabriel Valley?
So here is also another thing. There are being independently, and these are things that I've learned. Being an independent author is different than being a traditionally published author. And so when you are attempting to get your books into bookstores, there are certain criteria that you need to meet, or certain things that you have to do. As an independent author, it won't always be that way, because I'm looking into a couple of other things, but it is not as easy to get your books into a traditional brick and mortar bookstore if you're independently published, because they get books from the publisher. And if you can't send them that, or if it can't come from there, then your chances of being able to be in those types of bookstores are they're pretty small. So that is something that I believe will change, because the independent authors are getting bigger and bigger. And not to say that traditional publishing will ever be gone. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but there's going to be a time where they're going to have to figure out how to make it work for everybody, because there are a lot of authors who don't get the agent and who don't get into the big publishing companies, big publishing And so in terms of Romans, my book was there at the Romans in Pasadena. Strangers When We Die was there when I first released it back in July. And Robyn Destiny has not been there. I am hoping to move forward with getting it into some other places, but it is, again, the process is a lot different when you're independently published.
Right. So it's very important to you to do your marketing and find different civic groups that might actually be interested in your group, and go to the civic groups and do books, exactly a talk like you've just done today, and a book signing, which is very, very important. So,
and I have been blessed enough to do a couple of book signings. With the pandemic, I haven't done, when you release 2 books right in the middle of it, I think maybe it would have been different, but then again, had it not happened, things happen for a reason. I don't know if Robyn Destiny would have been written otherwise. So it's kind of like, yeah, the pandemic has been a hindrance, but it's also been good in terms of sitting and being able to think more. So yeah, hopefully I'll be able to do more book signings in person once we get through what we're going through now.
Right. Yes, this has been a very challenging time, and just the fact that you've been able to get these 2 books published is absolutely amazing. And to be this far along, you really should be congratulated. And that's actually what everybody is saying, that everybody in the chat, everybody can read it, and everybody's very, very pleased and very proud of you, and congratulate you for being able to do this. It's very, very, very difficult. And even if you are a big publisher, and an author from a publishing house is saying how difficult it is right now. So it's not easy for anyone. So you need to be very congratulated to be able to do that. And we're just so honored that you are part of the Authors and Their Journey series at the Pasadena Public Library. It's very important. And we'll look forward to welcoming you back for your third book. And
Thank you.
after you do that, so you will have done 3 different genres. What is your favorite? Do you have a favorite genre?
Oh gosh.
Or do you just like all of them?
Well, I'm gonna say if you had asked me this 2 years ago, there would not have even been a question, because I've horror, suspense, mystery, always. I think there's not too many Stephen King books I haven't read. I love Walter Mosley. If you are a Walter Mosley fan and you know of Easy Rawlins, I am so big into that. I love mysteries. I love murder mysteries, and I love horror. So if you asked me 2 years ago, that's what I would have said. Now it's a little murky. I love romance. I mean, I guess I've always loved romance, because even in a Stephen King book, there's always some kind of love in there. And I've always loved that. I've always gone to that. That's always been a big part of something that I enjoyed. And so even though I never read an actual romance novel per se, I've always loved romance, and I've always loved the idea of 2 people finding each other. I always loved that. I never even understood or knew what the romance genre really was. I always just thought of my grandmother's books, which was, the types of books I wouldn't read with the 2 people on the cover and, their windblown hair. And so that's never been for me. But now, having been able to read these brilliant writers who write about, mental illness and murder and everything, but it's in the romance genre. So all these things happen, but it's in the romance genre. And so I can get all of those things. I can get the angst and the mystery, and I can get that, and I can get a romance. And so I don't know. I kind of feel like if I had to pick one right now, that's where I'm feeling. And so I say that the current book is going to be in that genre. The book after that will be in that genre, but it's a sci-fi kind of thing. But the book after that, the follow-up to Robyn and Destiny, will take me back to murder. And it will, like I said, I think it's going to be in the thriller category. It will not be a romance, because the follow-up to Robyn and Destiny is not a romance. Is the best I can say. So I hope that answered your question. But yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of feeling this romance thing right now.
Well, that's good. That's good. We'll look forward to it. And I know everyone will want to keep reading your books. So it's been just delightful to be able to visit with you today. And we're just so honored. I do, before we close, I want to tell everyone, maybe they don't know, that the Pasadena Public Library has done for the past 20 years, and this is our 20th year, One City, One Story, where we select, there's a community selection committee, and they select the book. So this year they have selected In the Country of Women. You can see it in our brochure. It's by Susan Straight. She is a professor at University of California, Riverside, started the writing program out at University of California, Riverside, and she will be on Zoom on Thursday, March the 10th. So if you're interested in listening to her, she lives in Riverside. She's Caucasian, and she married an African American, and she talks about the 2 families coming together, and her husband Dwayne's family, and the history of the family and how they came from East Coast, the South, to California and settled in Riverside. So it's a memoir in the Country of Women, but she's written a lot of other books. If you want to sign up for it, you go to the Pasadena Public Library website. You go to events and go to Off the Shelf, and you'll find the link. So you can also contact me. I'm Christine Reeder, and we would love to welcome you to One City, One Story on Thursday, March the 10th. And so thank you so much, Nalo, for this wonderful, wonderful program.
Thank you.
Thank
you everybody who joined. Thank you.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Christine, are you going to hang on?
No, I'm going to close right now.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Then thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
And I will be bringing over the hardcovers.
Oh, that's very, very generous of you. Thank you.
I'll
very
be bringing those over this week.
Thank you very much. That's
Thank
extremely-
you. Have a good evening and thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much. It was lots of fun. Lots of fun.
It
Thank
was. It
Yeah.
was. Malcolm.
Bye-bye.